What's up guys, Axel back with another video today, and today we have another tier list. Now a new character came out and the new Sparlobus came out, so I thought it just right for me to make another tier list. Obviously we have another character coming out in like 13 days, and I'll make a new tier list for that character, and that Sparlobus that I don't know when the next Sparlobus is updating. But obviously I'm back with another tier list, and I have a lot of comments from my last tier list that I responded to. I saw a majority of them and I responded to like half of them. I didn't respond to some of them that I just thought like were brain dead. Like I saw a couple of them were just like, oh, Bennett, why is Bennett top 10? Like I don't think I really need to respond to those. But obviously if you guys actually have a just argument, I will respond to the comments, and I'll even admit that maybe I was wrong, and sometimes I am wrong. I am human after all, and I can't make everything perfect, but I can try to with the help of you guys. So I support your comments so much, and I hope to see even more comments in this video. But today I have a lot of adjustments to make, and obviously we have a new character. I might be saying her name wrong, Kirara. I know you're supposed to roll the R, but even though I'm Hispanic, I'm terrible at rolling my R's, so sorry for missing her name a couple times throughout this video, but I won't really have too much to say about her because I actually have more to say about more of the other characters, because I have a lot of adjustments to make from my last year. Not too many, but just some big adjustments. Starting off with Raiden, I think we all know she's top 10. I don't think that's even arguable. But the next character, obviously Amber, C tier, worst character in the game, arguably. I would say Aloy's worse, but no, Amber, she's not that good. Xingqiu is top 10, and I kind of want to, before we even get further into the video, I kind of want to give a criteria for what I consider like S tier and all that type of stuff, because I have Arataki Ito coming out, and some people have disagreement from my last video where I put Arataki Ito. I will put Arataki Ito at S tier. Now a lot of people have different stances compared to me when I rank my tier list, because a lot of people say, well, Arataki Ito isn't meta, right? And what meta is defined as like pretty much as the most used characters and the best characters for Sparlobus. And I understand where that comes from. If like they're not meta, they can't be S tier, but in my opinion, Arataki Ito has the kit to be S tier. I don't think he's that far off from someone like what's it called, Yae Miko. Obviously Yae Miko just has better supports, and she can pretty much just do everything Arataki Ito does, but better in some instances. But Arataki Ito definitely can do the damage output, but the only reason why you choose someone like Yae Miko over someone like Arataki Ito in like a Sparlobus situation is because Arataki Ito's Geo. But I don't really want to say like, oh yeah, Arataki Ito should be going to S- tier because he's Geo, because Arataki Ito can still do huge amount of damage, and I think he's still worthy of S tier. Some people might disagree, because there can only be what, like 3 top tier DPSs and all of them are supports. That to me just doesn't make sense. I have to strike a balance between good DPSs and good supports, and in this game there isn't that many good DPSs, so I can't just be like Raiden and Ayaka and Alhaitham are 11 are top 10 11 through 20 and S tier, and we only have 3 DPS in S tier and above. That doesn't make any sense. I don't think that's fair to a lot of DPSs when Arataki Ito is still a really good DPS, and he definitely deserves S tier in my opinion. So if you have any complaints about like why I have some DPSs higher than others, it's because even though they're not meta, they're still amazing DPSs. And I'll talk about the amazing DPSs that aren't meta later in the video. Next up is Klee. Klee is like an A tier. She's solid, clunky, but she just has issues with her just kit is set in general, because being that small, it just kind of messes up her DPS potential. Next up, Noelle. I'd put her S-, a really solid damage dealer. I just don't think she's as good as Arataki Ito. Next up is Ayaka. I still have Ayaka top 10. She's really good. Obviously, I think more people, I'm surprised. Ayaka is really good, and some people don't seem to notice that. But Ayaka is a really solid character, especially now in this Sparlobus where we have characters who don't move that much compared to the last Sparlobus. So she definitely still deserving top 10. Next up is Goru, and a lot of people had issues with Goru's placement for my last tier list. But reason I put him S tier and so high is because even though he is not meta or he's not used that much in the teams he is used, he is one of the best units in the game. He is Geo Bennett, and Geo Bennett is just a great character. Obviously, people who don't use Geo characters don't see the value in him, but if you do use a Geo character, Goru is probably like the best support you could think of. So Goru just has to be an S tier in my opinion. Next up is Yaimiko. Yaimiko is S tier. Obviously arguable top 11 to 20. And letting you guys know this tier isn't ordered just because I have someone like what's it called, Raiden over Xingqiu or like Xingqiu over Aika doesn't mean I think they're better. I just don't have time to rank these characters because if I did, we'd be here for 2 hours. Obviously I always say that in every tier list, but I always know there's new people who show up and don't know that I don't order these tier lists. I just put them in their respective tiers. Next up is Kaveh. I think some people will pronounce him Kaveh. I put him like, I'm actually bumping him up to S minus. I had him A tier, but I see the more potential that we have with him because there is some characters coming out in the future who is gonna, make him more valuable, and he's doing some. I've already seen the clips of him doing some insane damage by just popping all those like Dendro orbs. Obviously, it's just the more characters that apply Hyper Bloom that come out, the more value he'll get. Next up is Mona. Mona is, I'll keep her S minus. I think she's just not as good as some of the Hydro characters we have in the game, but I think she's still really good in this game. Obviously, we just have so many good Hydro characters in the game. I think Mona is just not as good as when she first came out. Deha, I would put her A tier. She can do some stuff, if you're not jumping, you could do some solid damage. Besides that, I would never recommend her to a lot of people. Next up is Sucrose, 11 to 20 character, easy. Sucrose amazing, elemental mastery, and being an animal character helps her out amazingly. Even if you're just like a mid animal character, you're still really good. Official is 11 to 20, really good. I know some people say she should be top 10, but top 10 is super good. I don't know if I could arguably put her in the top 10, but maybe at the end of this video, I can look back and let's see if she deserves to take someone else's spots. Colleen, I would put her like A tier just because I think I'd prefer the Dendro Traveler over her. Obviously, I don't think her kit's that amazing, but since, there's very little Dendro appliers in the game, she kind of has to go A tier because like her values increase. The more Dendro characters we do get out, I think her value will decrease, but besides then, she'll stay in A tier. Next up is Zhongli, and Zhongli was kind of like the most controversial pick for top 10 in my last video, and the reason why is because I guess some people don't really use shields and some people don't see the value of Zhongli, but like Zhongli is probably like the best shooter in the game. Even though his shields are not the strongest, I think he's the most versatile shooter. He's an amazing support. I kind of think he's the best at what he does in his respective like area, so I think he deserves to be top 10. If you're the best at what you do, I think you should be top 10. Obviously some people might disagree, but I will fight you on that. I think Zhongli is an amazing character still to this day. Next up is Eula. Now Eula was probably the most controversial character in my last tier list because I had her S tier, and I think I will keep her S tier. This new Spiral Abyss is even better for her because we have what's it called, the Abyss Heralds, and I think Eula does amazing in the Abyss Heralds, in my personal opinion. So I think Eula is an amazing character. Obviously, she's not the best in every single respective way, but Eula is still an amazing character, and I think the reason people don't quite see why I put her S tier is because she's a physical damage dealer, and I can't, like, I try to like argue with people in the comments like, just because she's a physical damage dealer and she has some weaknesses in Spiral Abyss doesn't mean she's not an amazing DPS. Is she top 11 to 20? No, but I think she deserves to be an S tier. She has some of the highest damage numbers in the game, and if you're telling me your main job is to do damage and Eula does the most damage in the game, how is she not an amazing character and deserving to be an S tier? Obviously people would be like, well, she's not meta. Well, I don't think meta should define everything, and I think Eula deserves to be S tier in my opinion. She's still really solid. If you don't have like the meta characters like a Raiden or a Yaimiko, I think a Eula is properly usable and very good in a lot of cases, and sometimes surpasses characters like a Yaimiko and a Raiden when it comes to just like quick burst damage, in my opinion. So I think Eula deserves to be S tier, and I will not back down from this hill no matter how many comments I get. I think Eula should be S tier even though she's not meta. Rosaria's S minus, a really great character, pretty good for physical damage teams, and just good at cryo player in general. I think Rosaria is amazing. Next up is Zhao. I think Zhao is also S tier. He's really solid, really good. Obviously, we got the new artifacts and all that, and Zhao is a really good character, and we keep on getting animal supports with like Farzan, and I think she got the rerun. She was like a featured 4-star in the last spanner. She was in a recent battle, and Farzan is way easier to get constellations for, making Zhao better in my opinion. Next up is Toma. Toma's also S tier, really solid. I think one of the amazing shooter. If you don't have someone like Zhongli, he's a perfect for a Hu Tao team, and Hu Tao's still one of the best DPS in the game. I think Toma's often underrated. Obviously, I don't hear too many people talk about Toma, but I think he's an amazing character, definitely deserving of S tier. Yeah, I put S minus, good, but just not S tier good, in my opinion. Xinyan, also one of the worst characters in the game. I love everything about her. I like her design wise, but just sad to see she's C tier, and it doesn't help that she is a physical damage dealer. Just not a good day for her. Next up is Child. You know, it's been a while since we put someone at 11 through 20, so Child definitely deserves to be there. Obviously, I think some people underrate Child. I think Child is slowly getting there to underrating him. I used to underrate him actually back in the day. I had a whole video where I was like, Child like kind of fell off from grace, but then like he kind of got saved from like all these other characters coming out, and I think Child is a character who, in his simplicity, makes him so good, because he's pretty much, you're on the field, you just apply hydro, you have a pretty good ult, and I think Child is, just because he's so simple, he's gonna last, I think, forever, in my opinion, unless we just get a better Child, which was supposed to be Aito, but you know, Aito just kind of the same level, just not as good as Child, in my opinion. Razor, I would put like Razor B tier. I can't even see a situation where I'd have him higher than B tier. Obviously you can use the electro damage dealing, but like, why are you using Electro Razor just in general? Like, why? A character that I am demoting is Hu Tao. I usually have her top 10, but I have a character who I'm promoting later in this video. So I'm gonna demote Hu Tao because I'm promoting a character later in the video. I'll tell you who I'm promoting when I get to that character, but know that Hu Tao is going down just because so many characters in Spalabus. You know, we have like, when you have more than 3 enemies, like 3 Heralds, you know, Hu Tao's gonna kind of struggle a bit because she is mainly a character who can't multi-target a character. You can't attack multiple characters at once like some other characters like Xing Lang and like a Raiden, who can attack multiple characters because they have such wide-reaching moves. But you know, Hu Tao kind of a struggling from the new Spalabus characters, but when we get some more like tanky one enemy in Spalabus, she'll definitely go back up. But you know, we're demoting her because there is a better DPS that I want to promote. Next up is Venti, and Venti is going 11 to 20 spot, and there is Venti's kind of like the main character that I always point to, where even though he's not meta and the Spalabus is not built around him and he's not perfect for this Spalabus, he's still an amazing character. I think we all know how great Venti is. If the characters can be moved by Venti's ult, he's probably one of the best characters in the game. Arguably top 10 characters in the game if the enemy can be moved. It's just that there's sometimes in the Spalabus they put characters that you can't move, or he can't, he's like 11 to 20. He is a character where I would compare to Eula when Eula isn't facing someone who isn't like a machine enemy. She's an amazing character, but when we're facing a machine enemy, and obviously, you know, we have a lot of machine enemies in the game, mainly in the Spalabus, she kind of like, you know, loses a little of her advantage. Same thing with Venti. If the character can't be moved, you know, it's not as amazing, but I still think he deserves 11 to 20 spot. Fight me on that. Venti's still an amazing character in this game. Next up is Henzo, such an amazing character. Wish he was better, but to me, he is just B tier. Next up is Layla. I'm putting her at A tier. I could see her S minus. She does have really good shields, but I think shielders just need to alpha a little more. And her just like ult and stuff like that, I don't think is amazing when it comes to applying cryo. So for me, it's A tier in my opinion. I prefer Rosaria over Layla, but I can be convinced that Layla is better than Rosaria in some situations. Next up is Yellen. Now I just think she's a character who is kind of like a Goru, who could be like an amazing character if we had a lot of normal attacking damage dealers, but we just don't have that many. All I can come to my top of my eyes is Yoimiya, and Yoimiya is just a character who is also pretty niche when it comes to damage dealing. So if we just have more single target damage dealers who can just do auto attacks, she'd be bumping up a couple spots, but since we have like very like small amount of those, she is A tier in my opinion. Next up is Yellen. I don't think we really need to discuss. She is top 10. She is pretty much Xingqiu, but a 5-star. Next up was Alloy, the worst character in my opinion in the game. I just don't see a way where Alloy's not the worst character in the game in my opinion. Next up is Sayu. I could have put her A tier. I have heard a lot of people saying she's underrated, but I just don't see a reason why I ever have her out on the field. Her E is pretty useless if you're like trying to like go into Spalabus with it, but if like you're just traversing, she is kind of fun. Next up is Wanderer. Wanderer's S tier, pretty solid. Obviously we have Farzan, who makes him even better, and the more times you can get more Farzan constellations, the more better Zhao and Wanderer get at the game. Next up is Chi-Chi. I'm obviously putting Chi-Chi C tier. I used to have hopes for Chi-Chi, but you know, nowadays I just can't recommend Chi-Chi to anyone unless you're just like, you just have 0 healers for some reason and you like somehow don't have Barbara anymore. I think Barbara's more useful sometimes, but I just would never recommend a Chi-Chi. Next up is Diluc. I think he's A tier. He's a solid character. He's just pretty simple, but I don't see him being any higher than S tier in my opinion. Obviously, you know, there is some amazing supports, but I'd rather recommend other amazing DPS than Diluc. But you know, Diluc's solid. I guess you could use him on some instances, but I think nowadays he's pretty much carried by his supports. Next up is Tignari. I think Tignari is S tier. I think I might bump him down though to S minus because you know, just like auto shotting and charge shotting is maybe not the solution nowadays because we have so many better Dendro attackers that I'm gonna bump Tignari down just because I think he's not as good as the DPS is in S tier. Last tier list I had him in the S tier, but I think I'm gonna bump him down, not for like any particular reason. I just don't think he's the same class as the S tier. Next up is Bennett. I don't even think I need to argue this. Bennett's top 10. I would even say he's top 3 in the game. Next up is Diona. Diona is S minus. I think a lot of people are underrating Diona, and I think a lot of people underrate Diona is this. She just has such a boring playstyle. Like, I would never want to have Diona on my team, but I gotta admit, she's a really good character. Not my first option just because she's not a very likable character to play, but you know, just a solid option that I'd put S minus here. But I think that is kind of the reason people are underrating her, just because she's not the funnest character to play in the game. Next up is the lawyer herself. I think she's in the same tier as Klee. Obviously, if you get like C6, I think she's better than Klee, but I'm like kind of a ranker around C3 and C2. That's kind of where I rank most of my 4 stars at, so I just keep her at A tier, kind of at the same level with Klee. Obviously, higher constellations, the better she is. Next up is Kokomi. Kokomi's an 11 to 20 character, and she's a prime example of just like her DPS is carrying her into being relevant in the game and being meta. So 11 to 20 for her. Next up is Nylo, which is pretty much what most of my comments were for last video. And I've heard you. I understand. I'm going to bump her to 11 to 20. I don't think she's as top 20 as a lot of other people have been saying, because I do think Yelan and Xingqiu are better at Nylo. I think Nylo does stuff differently, but I don't think Nylo should definitely be top 10. Obviously, you can argue that she should be, and I love to hear your arguments for why you think Nylo should be 11 to 20. But once I get to those comments, I'll kind of be convinced. But for right now, I'll be at 11 to 20 spot. That's where I kind of have her in my mind right now. But let me know down in the comments what you guys think Nylo's at. Next up is Farzan. I think about now, I think I'm going to bump Farzan up to S tier just because she is pretty good when it comes to animal support, and she is the premier animal support for like a Zhao and a Wander. Then I'm gonna bump her up. She's gonna be taking Tignari's spot, so you know, I'm kind of like swapping these characters because I think I'm gonna swap them for now. I might bump Farzan down. I think she is really solid as a support to be in the S tier, but I am arguably might bump her down later in the video depending on how many S tier characters I have in this tier. Next up is Xinglang. Xinglang's top 10. I still see people underrate her. And just like, can we just stop the underrating of Xinglang? She's amazing. And I don't think we need to argue anymore about that. She's an amazing character. And I don't hear anyone talk about how she's not amazing. Like, it's a simple, just look at it. She's part of she has like some of the best teams. The Rated National teams, the Chao team. So many great teams. I don't know how anyone can see that she's not a top 10. Lisa, I'd put her B tier. She can do some stuff, but I would never be my first option. Ning Wong, I think A tier, solid damage, but I just don't think she's as good as some of the characters in S minus. We're kind of speedrunning right now. I already knocked down 2 characters. Barbara, I think is B tier, solid, but like when you're like freezing yourself, that gets kind of annoying. Kaya, I think Kaya is A tier. Obviously, if you have a high constellation, it's S minus, but I assume most people don't even have Kaya on constellation. That's why I'm kind of putting him A tier. If like he was a featured character, a featured 4-star, I'd most likely have him S minus. But since getting his constellations are almost impossible, I would get him A tier for me. And next up is Jean, a character that I think is so often overrated. Once you get to like the top tiers of like Genshin and you're like an end game player, which I think a lot of people are, especially if you're trying to 36-star Spiral Abyss, I don't think anyone still uses Jean when we have so many better healers in the game. So I think when you go to the end game of Spiral Abyss, I just don't think Jean's a better option. But obviously, if you're like pretty much a beginner, I think S minus or S tier is a spot for her. But when we're talking about in game, which is where a lot of people are, she's an A tier for me. Speaking of healers, we have Q-Key. Q-Key is probably one of the best healers because, you know, being the best healer means you have more stuff than healing. And Q-Key is 11 to 20 spot, one of the best healers in the game. Obviously, Dendro makes her even better, pushing her to 11 to 20 spot. She's just an amazing character in the game. I don't think I even need to go into detail why Q-Key's so amazing. Next up is Zoe Mia. She's kind of like a Yula and an Artagado, where when you just have a single enemy and you just need to do a bunch of damage, Yoimiya is probably the best character in the game when it comes to that. If you just one enemy, she's gonna obliterate them. Obviously, Pyro helps her with her, damage scaling and her reactions, because Pyro has some of the best reactions in the game. And when it comes to single target, she's definitely an S tier. Traveler, I'd put Traveler like S minus. No, not S minus. I'd keep him A tier like I always have him. I just think he's just not an interesting character when it comes to it. And I think every time we get new Dendro characters, the Traveler just becomes less and less value. That's how it always starts. I kind of always explain in every video, just when he first comes out and he's like the first character in the element, like when we first have Geo, when we first have Animo, when we first have Dendro, when we first have Electro, Archon, and all that type of stuff. When he first comes out, he's amazing, but then we get like better versions of him over time. Next up is Aito. I'll keep him S minus, but he's still really good. I just don't think he's as good as Child to be an 11 to 20 spot, and I think he's just slightly worse. Obviously, you can argue he's 11 to 20 spot, but personally, I wouldn't put him there. Next up is Kujosara. Kujosara is S minus because I don't assume most people have her C6, but if you do have her C6, she probably goes to S tier. But I'm just not a huge fan of Kujosara. I've never been. She kind of has a clunky playstyle, and I just really wouldn't recommend Kujosara over some other Electro characters. Next up is Keqing. Keqing is obviously an S tier, really good, really solid character in the game. Obviously, Keqing is really solid in the game. Obviously, I think, just not 11 to 20 spot, but a really good DPS. Shanna is also another S tier character, a really good character. She's kind of in that situation where she's still kind of niche, someone like a Garu, if you're not using a cryo support, I don't think she's as amazing if you don't have cryo DPS. Someone like an Ayaka, someone like Ayula, those type of characters who can do like what's called physical damage or cryo damage. Shanna kind of loses her value, but when you do have those things, she's amazing. Next up is Ganyu. Ganyu's 11 to 20 spot. She's kind of demoted from she got demoted in my last tier list. You can go into detail. You can go watch the last tier list into why I think she got demoted, but just kind of not the juggernaut she used to be in the game when we have so many other better DPSs in my opinion. Next up is Beidou. Beidou's an S minus. Obviously, when you can do that much electro damage and electro application, like as a sub DPS, she's still really good in the game. I just don't think S tier. Next up, Cyno, and Cyno is another character we are demoting, sadly. I think Cyno's an amazing character, but I had to demote someone for the 11 to 20 spot to put Nilo up there, and I think Cyno was probably like the most reasonable one. Obviously, I got a lot of Cyno hate from people saying, why is Cyno the 11 to 20 spot? I didn't really bring him down because I was like, oh, I'm getting so much hate on Cyno, I'm gonna bring him down for the fans. No, I didn't really do that. I kind of just thought, let me put Nilo up and let me bring Cyno down because he's probably like the weakest out of the 11 to 20 spots. I think still he's one of the best electro DPSs in the game, and I think he still has some amazing teams, and I think he's still underrated by a lot of people, but Cyno's still an amazing character. Next up is Dory. Dory's like B tier. I would never recommend a Dory ever in my life. Actually, I could put a C tier. I think I had a C tier last year, so I'll put a C tier. Next up is Mika. I'm pretty sure that was the name. I forget about this character exists. He just does nothing in my opinion. He's a C tier. Would never recommend him. Next up is Albedo. I'd also put Albedo S tier. We have a lot of S tier characters. It's actually insane. But I'll put him S tier. I don't think we're gonna have any more S tier characters in that tier from what I remember. I don't think anyone in the rest will be S tier characters. But let me bring all the worst characters to the top so I can get into some of these good characters. Candace beat C tier. We have Abyss Herald back in the game. I guess Chongun's B tier. I guess he goes up a tier. Al-Haytham is actually the character I'm promoting to top 10. Obviously, I didn't know too much about him in the last tier list. I did my research, but obviously I didn't do too much research on he was considered. So obviously I saw a lot of comments on how good he is. So I did more investigating, did more research, and yeah, he's definitely top 10 in my opinion. So easy top 10. Al-Haytham, just an amazing character. I did think he was an amazing in the last tier list. I just wasn't so quick to put him top 10. But he definitely deserves to be top 10. Next up is Baizhu. I ranked him in my last tier, so if you want to go more in depth into what I think of him, he's 11 to 20. I think he's really good. Obviously, being a Dendro character obviously increases his value. And next up is Kazuha, and we all know Kazuha is top 10, and we all know is Nahida is top 10. Pretty easy two spots. And we're down to the new character. And the new character, Kirara, I don't have too much to say about her, so this actually might be a quick tier list, quicker than my last video, because usually like majority of the last 25% is spent on the last character, because I really give in-depth, like thoughtful analysis when it's a new character. You know, obviously I give like a lot of analysis on these characters, but when it's the new character, I try to give most of my opinions on that. So that's why in some of my previous tier lists, when I talk about Cyno, when I talk about Hytham, well, not Hytham, Baizhu, like all these new characters like Wander and all that, when they first come out, that's when I give like my full in-depth analysis. I'm gonna do with Kirara for the same. Right, Kirara, I honestly think she's like an A tier. Not gonna lie, I don't think she's amazing, and I think A tier might be a little bit underrated, but might be in some people's eyes generous, because I don't think she's an amazing character. I like her E. I like how she turns into a little cat box and all that type of stuff, but I just don't think Dendro Shield right now is amazing, because like we don't need really Dendro Shielders, especially when we don't have like the best electro damage dealers, because I don't think a Cyno needs it, I don't think a Raiden needs it, I don't think a Yaimiko needs it. The only character in electro characters I can think of is probably a Kaching. That is probably the best use for her. But right now, I don't think we need a particular Dendro shooter. But we always see this in Genshin Impact with someone like a Q-Key, where like we kind of don't understand why she's good yet, or why they made a kit like this. But I expect that Kirara, there is going to be a character that's going to probably work so well with her, and she's probably going to bump up a tier, maybe even 2 tiers, depending on who it's going to be. I feel like the Electro Archon might actually work great with her when she comes out. That's obviously speculation, but for right now, I don't see a great of a use for her right now. So I am putting her in A tier. This is like very generous, because I realistically, I think I even might put her B tier, because I can't see a reason why you want to use her necessarily, because shielding is already a niche thing, right? Being a shielder, you're already pretty in a niche spot. That's why a lot of people don't see the value in Zhongli, and why a lot of people don't see the value in Toma. So I think we're gonna have to see with the future characters coming out how value Kirara is. But that being said, this is my tier list. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave down in the comments what you guys think of this tiers. Let me know your critiques. Let me know what you change, what you like, and all that type of good stuff. And I hope to see you guys next time. Later, hater, and peace out. See ya.